Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. Our plan for this plenary session is to review and proceed with the adoption of the CRP document. We will considering one by one. The sequence proposed for the CRPs is as follows. CRP.4 on the in-depth dialogue. CRP.2 on the joint program of work on the links between biological and cultural diversity. CRP.3 on the recommendations of the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. CRP.1 on the knowledge management component of the framework. Before we move to the consideration of the CRPs this afternoon, I would like to invite the Secretariat for an announcement. Secretary, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm aware that there's a number of delegates who have received travel funding to participate in this meeting who have not yet been able to access these funds because the Swiss bank cards are not yet active. I realize that this is causing significant hardship to a number of these delegates. And I want to give you my personal apologies, and I take full responsibility for this this failure of the Secretariat to ensure that you have access to these funds in a reasonable time. We and I give a lot of importance to the need to ensure that all delegates who are here can participate on an equal footing. And I realize that this distraction and this stress is making that difficult. We will analyze the reasons of why this is the case and find ways to make sure that in future delegates do have access to the funds in reasonable time. It seems there's been a number of delays in a number of unfortunately, there's a number of steps that have to be gone through for these cards to be activated. Each of those steps seems to have taken longer than it should. We'll be looking into this. It also seems that given the large number of meetings happening now that UNEP is organizing, that a credit line that the bank has been exhausted. So there seems to be a number of reasons, but we'll look into this in more detail to try and make sure this doesn't happen in the future. In terms of the current situation and the current difficulty that delegates are facing, for all delegates who had collected their cards by Monday, the 13th, I'm assured that these will be active in the course of the afternoon, and so that after this plenary, you should be able to access the funds. For those that collected their cards yesterday, we're working to accelerate the time it takes for them to be activated. It always takes some time. For those delegates that are facing very serious challenges with their hotel, or if there are delegates who attempt to access the cards after 6 p.m. and cannot do so for any reason, then please contact the Secretariat by one of two ways, either by email to secretariat@cbd.int, the normal Secretariat address, and just put DSA in the subject line. That will help us. And if you have a specific problem, please detail what that problem is. If you have a problem with a particular hotel, for instance, we can facilitate by contacting the hotel and asking them to be flexible. We will also have someone in the DSA room, that's B2333, from 6 to 8 p.m. today, to address any other issues that may arise. If you send an email earlier and it requires earlier action, then we'll be in contact with you to see what can be done. So again, I apologize for this this problem. We are trying to alleviate the problem as much as we can. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Secretary, for your information. Now I would like to invite Mr. Matilda Wilhelm and Ms. Lucy Muleke, co-chairs of the contact group on item 6, to report on the progress in the contact group discussion. Ms. Matilda Wilhelm, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have had 4 sessions of the contact group where we had the chance to discuss the 2 main issues in accordance to the mandate that you gave to us as co-chairs. First, I would like to thank the contact group for the collaborative and engaged spirit, which allowed us to carry out our work forward in a positive and constructive way. Also, on behalf of the co-chairs, I would like to thank the Secretariat for its support. During the sessions of the contact group, we discussed elements of the proposed new program of work and institutional arrangements. On the proposed program of work, we worked through most of the elements. We have the objective and principles and the 2 final elements to discuss. We also made progress in relation to the institutional arrangements. Dear delegates, we made significant progress, and these sessions of the contact group have allowed us to reach a common understanding on key issues under consideration. Unfortunately, we could not conclude our work on both issues, and we, as co-chairs, believe that having another session of the contact group could help us further advance and make progress. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, co-chairs. I want to thank the commitment from parties and the co-chairs for advancing the negotiation on the new work program and the institutional arrangement. Your comments to this work speaks to the commitment reflected in the GBF. Now, I propose that we begin with a discussion with CRP4 on in-depth dialogue. Democratic Republic of Congo, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président, pour la parole accordée, et merci à la coprésidente pour les rapports donnés pour l'avancement des travaux dans le groupe de contact. Nous tenons juste ici, Monsieur le Président, à vous aviser que dans l'esprit de ce groupe de contact, il a été question plutôt d'améliorer les textes et non d'ajouter de nouvelles propositions de textes. Et malheureusement, à la fin de cet avant-midi et au début de cet après-midi, il y a eu manifestement de nouveaux textes qui ont été ajoutés et qui ne vont pas permettre l'évolution des travaux dans le cadre de ce groupe de contact. Je voudrais vous avertir sur ces faits-là pour pour dire que si on continue à ajouter des textes ou que si on prend en compte les textes alternatifs, c'est-à-dire nous allons aussi ouvrir les débats sur l'ensemble du document pour que les négociations recommencent. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. It's noted. I will consult with the Secretariat. Thank you, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Your request is noticed. After consult with Secretariat, since we get more requests from the co-chair for the contact group, I think this issue will be reviewed during the contact group later on. Is that okay? Okay, then I give the floor to Indonesia.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Good afternoon, colleagues. In line with what has conveyed by the esteemed delegation of DRC, Indonesia also has concerns on the process, on the discussion of the work program as well as the institutional arrangement under item 6. There were proposals which we believe is not based on any mandate. And so we cannot accept proposals which are baseless, without any mandate, not under the framework. So we cannot create new things during this working group. This working group does not have, the authority to create new things without any basis. We just want to record this comment because we have really concerns about the process. And the second thing we would like to request, Mr. Co-Chair, if we would like to request that since some of us don't have a big number of delegates, we would like to request that if there were any contact group after this plenary, it would not be in parallel between each other. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Indonesia. Regarding your first question, I think as a response to distinguished representative from Democratic Republic of the Congo, that this issue will be back to the contact group later on. And regarding the second issue, is also raised during the Bureau meeting in the past day. Now, the conclusion is that since we have two working groups, AJ and DSI. So for each working group, there will be only one contact group at the same time, but it might be two contact groups for different working groups. So that may happen. Is that okay with you? Since we learned from the Secretary, for each working group, the participants are funded by different sources, so they have different sources for different persons. So in general, this two working group is separate. Okay, if that is okay, we just proceed. As you may remember, the in-depth dialogue included the presentation from 3 speakers, followed by a rich discussion on the role of language in transmitting traditional knowledge. The report of the in-depth dialogue will be part of the session report. Various parties welcome the discussion and put forward the minor modifications to the new theme of the in-depth dialogue in CRP 4. Now, I would like to go through this document paragraph by paragraph. Let's start with the first paragraph. Are there any comments on paragraph 1? No. Can we approve the first paragraph? I see no objections. So then we go through paragraph 2. Can we approve this paragraph? Okay, I see no objections. The second paragraph is approved. Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point of clarification. I'm a little bit lost. So are we starting from the beginning of the preambular paragraphs? So the first paragraph that would have been approved would be noting that.
Thank you, Australia. Your question is, your understanding is correct. We start with the paragraph 1 is like recording the International Decade of Indigenous Language 2022 to 2030. Then we approve the paragraph 2. Then now if you agree, we come to paragraph 3, notating that through languages, indigenous people and the local communities preserve the history, customs, and traditions, memory, unique models of thinking, meaning the exploration of their community. So is that paragraph okay with the delegate? Okay, then we come to the paragraph 4. So I will not read it unless. Okay, it seemed quite understandable. Then we come to next paragraph 5, the last paragraph in the first page. Any comment? No. Okay, Democratic Republic of Congo, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup. Sur ce paragraphe 2, nous avons suggéré qu'on puisse remplacer notant que par reconnaissant que. Merci.
Any objections to the DRC's comments? European Union, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Mi comentario se refiere a este párrafo, pero no a la propuesta de la República Democrática del Congo. ¿Puedo continuar con mi comentario?
Yes, please.
Muchas gracias, señor copresidente. En el párrafo que comienza, leo en inglés, noting further that in Target 21 of the framework of the Conference of the Parties, creo que es el párrafo en el que estamos, con la enmienda realizada, no obstante, por República Democrática del Congo. A mitad de párrafo hay una referencia a free, prior and informed consent. Solicitamos que tras esta referencia se incluya una llamada al pie de página en la que se haga referencia a la terminología acordada en la decisión 14/30. Por tanto, el pie de página debería incluir el siguiente texto. Free, prior and informed consent refers to the tripartite terminology of prior and informed consent, free, prior and informed consent, or approval and involvement. Gracias, presidente.
Thank you. It's noted. I think it should be okay regarding the comments from the distinguished guest from the Democratic Republic of the Congo and the European Union, unless there is any objection from the floor to their modification. If no, we adopt their changes. Thank you. Since we already went through the paragraph 5, then we turn to next page of CRP 4, and we go through paragraph 6, recognizing that the contribution of the indigenous people and the local language and the traditional knowledge to addressing global biodiversity loss. European Union, you have the floor.
No, sí. Muchas gracias, señor copresidente, por darme de nuevo la palabra. Observamos que ha habido una inclusión en este párrafo 6 que incluye nuevo texto al final. Me refiero a la última inclusión en la parte final del texto, y que ese mismo texto exactamente se incluye también al final del texto 8. No tenemos objeción a su contenido, pero nos preguntamos si sería útil y posible, por simplificar el documento, el texto de la decisión, eliminarlo en este párrafo 6. Por tanto, la propuesta es eliminar a partir de "and emphasizing the need for making indigenous concepts, cosmovisions", y hasta el final del párrafo, por el motivo expuesto de que ello ya está recogido en el párrafo 8 posteriormente. Gracias, señor copresidente.
So noted, I will be back to your intervention. Then I give the floor to Togo, then I'm back to your comments.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Au niveau donc du paragraphe 6, nous avions souhaité avoir au niveau de l'avant-dernière ligne, au niveau à partir de faciliter la compréhension des concepts de cosmovision et des épistémologies autochtones, ajoutées et locales. Donc, épistémologie autochtone et locale. Et maintenant, à la fin carrément donc, du paragraphe, au lieu de « au processus de la Convention », donc au processus de la Convention et de ses protocoles. Donc, ajouter et de ces protocoles. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
You can say that? Sorry.
Thank you for the two interventions. Regarding the EU comments, I would like to suggest that we delete in the end of paragraph from and emphasizing the need for making indigenous concept cosmovisions and epistemologies more understandable for parties and all actors involved in process and the convention, since it's duplicated with paragraph A. So we suggest to delete it. And regarding the comments from Togo, it should be added and local after indigenous and before concept. We would like read as indigenous and local concept, but it will be in paragraph 8. Is that agreeable for, okay. I see Australia, then Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No objections to the suggestion of the deletion for the EU, but if we are to keep this language in paragraph 8, we would just, and it may be that my English is very much Australian English, not the King's English, to understand better the language of cosmovisions, and I'm not even sure I'm going to be able to pronounce the next one, epistemologies. Perhaps maybe we could look to simplify that language and understand better their meaning. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, then Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. C'est juste pour appuyer votre proposition de supprimer ces éléments de ces paragraphes et de les ramener au paragraphe 8. Et nous avons aussi la même préoccupation. On ne comprend pas trop la signification de cosmovision et épistémologie autochtone. Mais on soutient également la proposition du Togo d'ajouter local après autochtone. Merci.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to suggest the first Secretariat, you have a suggestion taking into previous comments. What is your suggestion, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not a suggestion, but just to read out what we have now with regards to the proposals that we have on the table. So the proposal is to, in that sentence that appears duplicated in the two preambular paragraph, to keep indigenous concept, cosmovision, indigenous and local concept, cosmovision, and remove the epistemologies, which is also actually in line with the wording of the Global Biodiversity Framework. So I understand that would be the proposal by Australia. Am I correct? Yes.
Any objection to the Secretariat's modification? If now, I give the floor to Togo, followed by Norway.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. C'est vrai que la proposition telle que vient d'être lue par le secrétariat, et nous nous demandons si nous avons bien saisi la quintessence donc du texte maintenant. Alors qu'à cela ne tienne, sur la base donc de ce que je crois avoir compris, si nous partons donc de la proposition que j'avais faite qui concerne à ajouter et local, j'avais également souhaité qu'il y ait in fine de la phrase la convention et de ses protocoles. Donc si je comprends, avec la proposition de l'autre, voilà, je pense que dans le récap donc, de ma proposition, je n'ai pas senti cela revenir. Donc je voulais donc repréciser cela. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président. Tout en bien entendu, en étant d'accord que le paragraphe, la partie en question puisse aller donc au paragraphe qui suit.
Thank you. We think your intervention is very correct. So if there is more objection, we can take your new intervention in consideration. If not, I give the floor to Norway.
Thank you. I think, or Norway thinks that, these concepts describe precisely what indigenous peoples and local communities' worldviews and ways of working in the world, ways of maintaining nature and maintaining biodiversity, describes precisely why they add value to the work of the convention. So while we could refer to language adopted in the GBF, if that comes close, that's an opportunity. But otherwise, it's not incumbent on the parties to have indigenous peoples explain these issues to us. This is something indigenous peoples and local communities do every so often inside events and every other opportunity, describing why this is part of their way of life and why that adds value to the convention and the GBF. So our proposal is to not meddle with these concepts, which scientifically and otherwise describe well the added value of indigenous peoples and local communities' contribution to the GBF and the CBD. Thanks.
Thank you, Norway. Noted your intervention. Now I give the floor to Canada.
Thank you, Co-Chair. So in order to find an agreement between everyone, we would like to suggest, instead of concepts, cosmovision, and epistemologies, knowledge systems, which encompasses all of the three. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Australia, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I think that Canada's solution just now was very eloquent. I would like to just draw out that the paragraph itself is actually about helping parties to understand these concepts as they apply to Indigenous peoples and local communities. So clarifying the text goes a long way. So thank you, Canada.
Thank you. Next floor I give to Colombia, then we will be back to the previous intervention.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Canada, for the proposal. We also agree with that the knowledge systems can be the best concept to include in this paragraph instead of cosmovision and epistemologies. Thank you.
Okay, thanks to previous intervention from Canada, Australia, and also from Colombia, sorry. So after consult with Secretary, we think if there is no objection to your comments, we can take it. Guatemala, please.
Muchas gracias, señor copresidente. Solamente quiero hacer referencia en el sentido de que este párrafo es de suma importancia para nosotros como estados, pero también para los pueblos indígenas, porque aquí se trata de visibilizar ese aporte que hacen los pueblos indígenas hacia la conservación de la diversidad biológica a través de su cosmovisión, de su conocimiento y de cómo ellos conciben la vida. En ese sentido, Guatemala considera que el texto debe quedar tal y como está, porque nosotros como estados debemos comprender que los pueblos indígenas tienen una visión holística y por lo tanto no podemos separar sus conocimientos, su visión, su cosmovisión sobre el cuidado de la diversidad biológica. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Let me consult with the Secretary. Okay, thanks for your comments. Now I give the floor to my co-chair, Ms. June, the Indigenous co-chair. You have your comments to the intervention. Thank you.
Thank you, co-chair. I just wanted to point out that knowledge systems is very different from concepts, cosmovisions, and epistemologies. So Guatemala is right. They are very distinct in its own way. And this has been covered and discussed in detail within the IPBES Global Assessment, which was recently reviewed by the SUBSTA. So that is my comment on that.
Thank you.
So, sorry, just to add, epistemologies is the ways of knowing. So the ways that indigenous peoples understand the world. Cosmovisions is the overall visions that they have of, the past, future, and present. And the concepts of understanding the world as such. In my training, knowledge systems is not an inadequate term to cover these very distinct and very important terms that reflect indigenous ways of knowing and living. So the title of the IPBES Global report that I've mentioned is the methodological assessment regarding the diverse conceptualization of multiple values of nature and its benefits, including biodiversity, ecosystem functions, and services.
Thank you, co-chair. Now I give the floor to Togo, followed by Australia.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. En fait, nous avons sollicité la parole pour pouvoir peut-être appuyer l'intervention du Guatemala. Et nous apprécions bien entendu le point de vue de la Norvège, mais quand vous regardez un peu le travail qui est demandé, je pense qu'en termes même de capacité pour pouvoir opérer ou en tout cas réaliser ce que nous sommes en train de demander, il nous semble que ce qui est mieux approprié serait donc d'être fait par donc, les États. Et on n'a pas besoin de faire trop donc, de séparation entre les communautés locales, les peuples autochtones et l'État en lui. Donc, pour moi, techniquement, le niveau auquel le travail peut être mieux fait, je pense que les États peuvent donc contribuer à cela. Et quand vous regardez bien le texte ne dit pas que c'est exclusivement les États. Donc, il y a également les autres acteurs, y compris, bien entendu, les peuples autochtones et les communautés locales. Et donc, pour nous, ça a quand même un sens par rapport donc, à ce qui est mis comme texte. Donc, juste pour soutenir donc, que cela ne soit pas supprimé et que nous trouvons la pertinence donc, de pouvoir avoir le texte comme tel, y compris, bien entendu, notre proposition d'avant. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. Then Australia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to take the floor to say thank you very much to the Indigenous co-chair for the explanation. That helps very much. We'd be happy to go with the original text with that explanation, and I look forward to learning more about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mexico.
Muchas gracias, presidente. Yo solo quisiera, si es posible, que pudiéramos cambiar el término local language, lenguas locales, por mother language, lenguas maternas, que incluso tenemos en febrero declarado el mes de la lengua materna por las Naciones Unidas. Gracias.
Okay, since we have different groups for two voice, we need compromise. So if there is no objection, we would like to keep the original words with additional reference to local and its protocols as a compromise. Democratic Republic of the Congo, you have the floor.
Oui, Monsieur le Président, nous supportons juste votre proposition parce qu'ici, il s'agit du dialogue sur les peuples autochtones et les communautés locales et ils n'ont pas fait allusion à la langue maternelle. Merci.
Thank you. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Co-Chair. In order to find a compromise, Canada would like to suggest, after recognizing the contribution of the languages of Indigenous people and local communities, instead of Indigenous and local languages. Thank you, Co-Chair.
We think it's okay unless there is any objection. Otherwise, we can invite the Secretary can read out the clean version for your adoption.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. And this is how I captured it. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Recognizing that the contribution of languages of Indigenous peoples and local communities and traditional knowledge, and so on.
Any objection? I see no objection. Then we can go through this paragraph. Then we move to paragraph 7. Recognize also that diverse language and knowledge system reflecting the strong and collective relationship of Indigenous people and the local communities. Democratic Republic of the Congo, you have the floor.
Oui, Monsieur le Président, c'est juste à la fin de ces paragraphes, nous avons proposé qu'on ajoute après la résilience social, qu'on ajoute économique, et justement, et puis écologique après. Merci.
Is acceptable to us unless there is any objection from the floor. If not, we take the intervention by Democratic Republic of the Congo. Then we go through paragraph 8, recognizing further the relevance of the joint program of the work on the links between biologic and cultural diversity and the target 22 of the framework. Any intervention for this paragraph? Yeah, we already had some change before, right? Okay, so we move to OP1. Yes. OP1, invite parties to fully acknowledge the role of indigenous and the local language, including the role of indigenous women and those from local communities. Any comments on OP1? Togo, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Co-président. Notre intervention, c'est juste pour pouvoir tenir compte donc, des modifications antérieures pour qu'il y ait une sorte de parallélisme des formes. Il s'agit de garder la terminologie telle que adoptée au niveau du paragraphe 7 qui dit des langues des peuples autochtones et des communautés locales. Je ne sais pas si vous saisissez. OK. Merci.
Russian Federation, you have the floor.
Спасибо, господин председатель. We have more like probably an editorial request. I understand that it will make it probably a little bit longer. But when we refer to Global Biodiversity Framework, we would prefer every time to have a full name to avoid any misunderstandings or any different understanding of what framework means. So, and that's to do across the documents. I understand that Secretariat editor probably advised differently, but we prefer to see the full name. Thank you.
Thank you. Intervention from Togo and the Russian Federation. If there is no objection, we would like to adopt their modification. European Union.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Se trata también de una propuesta de tipo editorial. En un párrafo anterior, si me permite comentarlo para posible valoración, el párrafo que comenzaba con recognizing also that diverse language and knowledge systems. Ruego disculpas porque creo que hemos pasado, pero al tratarse de un cambio editorial quería proponerlo. Cuando se habla en la segunda línea de collective relationships of indigenous, creemos que falta un peoples, indigenous peoples and local communities. Muchas gracias, señor copresidente.
Thank you, EU. Unless any objection, we can adapt your comments. Okay, then we go through open paragraph 2. Encourage parties, other governments, relevant organizations, indigenous people, local communities, women, youth, and stakeholders. Democratic Republic of the Congo. You have the floor.
Oui, merci. À la troisième ligne de ce paragraphe, là où on parle des langues autochtones, nous voudrions suggérer qu'on rentre sur la proposition faite par le Togo. Et puis, à la ligne 7, on parle de la mise en œuvre de la Convention. Nous voudrions suggérer qu'on ajoute de ces protocoles et puis du cadre mondial de la biodiversité économique Montréal. Merci.
Thank you. It's noted. Unless there is an objection, we can take into consideration what you suggest. Then I give the floor to Australia.
Thank you, Chair. No objections to the last party's insertion. I would like to point out, however, in the first sentence, it should read Indigenous peoples and local communities rather than Indigenous peoples, comma, local communities. And we feel that there's something missing at the end of that sentence, or in the middle of the sentence, local communities, women, youth, and other relevant stakeholders, just to make sure that that's clear. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Australia. We can take your comments unless there is an objection from the floor. If not, we go to open paragraph 3. Decided that the theme of the next in-depth dialogue. Sorry, Swatini, you have the floor.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Just in operative paragraph 2, we just wanted to add a local after indigenous so that it reads indigenous and local languages.
So we can take your comments unless there is any objection. European Union, you have the floor, followed by Mexico.
Muchas gracias, señor copresidente. Mi comentario se refiere al párrafo operativo 3. ¿Estamos ya ahí? ¿Puedo continuar o hemos vuelto al 2?
We already on paragraph 3, but we have some comments for the previous one. Yeah. Mexico, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. No tengo objeciones, solamente quería, sobre el párrafo operativo 2, y con una disculpa por regresarme, en la parte que dice Joe and stakeholders to incorporate as appropriate the vitalization, sugiero suprimir vitalization y sustituirlo por conservation and revitalization, que son los términos utilizados en el marco del Decenio Internacional de Lenguas Indígenas. Muchas gracias.
So I give the floor to Canada first, then we will back to your intervention.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Canada will also prefer revitalization over vitalization. And second, would like to add when it says revitalization of indigenous languages, instead of that, we could add the languages of indigenous peoples and local communities, as agreed in the paragraphs above. Thank you.
Sorry, Canada, because there are some interruption in the translation. So okay, the secretary, you can have to read out the modified version.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. With your indulgence, I will read the entire paragraph. And operative paragraph 2, with the amendments, would read, encourages parties, other governments, relevant organizations, indigenous peoples and local communities, women, youth, and other relevant stakeholders to incorporate, as appropriate, the conservation and revitalization of the languages of indigenous peoples and local communities, including through concrete actions such as support for community initiatives, for cultural and resource centers and field schools, given their fundamental role in the intergenerational transmission of traditional knowledge into the implementation of the Convention and its protocols and the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. And then it continues until the end without any changes.
Okay, the Mexico intervention also be integrated. So any objection to OP2? If now we go to OP3, actually we were already in OP3, but any comments? If European Union, please.
Muchas gracias, señor copresidente. Tenemos una propuesta para añadir una palabra en la penúltima línea de este párrafo, antepenúltima, después de indigenous peoples and local communities, to add a comma, to add including, and then it continues women and youth to support the full implementation. Por tanto, la propuesta es simplemente incluir una coma y un including antes de women and youth, a fin de centrar y hacer más específica la propuesta del diálogo. Muchas gracias, señor copresidente.
Thank you. Is acceptable to any parties? If no, we adopt your comments. Then if there is no more intervention, I would like to say the CRP4 is approved. Thank you. Thank you. I now propose that we begin our discussion with CRP2 on the joint program of work on the links between biological and cultural diversity, particularly the review and update of the 4 traditional knowledge indicators. Our initial discussion of this matter took place on Monday morning. With the support of the Secretariat, I have incorporated the proposed modification to the draft recommendation now reflected in CRP2, which is currently at your disposal. The process of monitoring the framework of the GBF is expected to be concluded at COP16. The contribution of this body on the indicators related to traditional knowledge and indigenous peoples and the local communities would complement the work on this matter. I would like to go through this document paragraph by paragraph. So let's start with the paragraph 1. Are there any comments on the paragraph? I will read the first. Takes note the progress made by the ad hoc technical expert group on indicators. So I see no request for the floor. Then we go through paragraph 2. Notice that the proposed global indicators collected from binary responses related to target 22. Any requests from the floor for comments? If not, I go through paragraph 3, stresses that given the relevance of target 22 for the implementation. Any request from the floor? If not, paragraph 4 invites ad hoc technology. So, sorry, we have Canada. You have the floor, please.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Canada would like to put in brackets this paragraph because the monitoring framework has already been adopted and it does not include cross-cutting indicators. We cannot support the reopening of the agreed upon monitoring framework. We hope we can work to operate, I cannot say these words, operationalize it. So we are very supportive of a discussion on the global indicator on target 22. We're concerned about it being a cross-cutting indicator. Thank you, Co-Chair.
Okay, we will be back to your comments. Switzerland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. We had a similar comment as just Canada made, so we support the comment by Canada. Thank you.
Okay, both intervention from Canada and Switzerland will be incorporated unless there is any objection. If no, we go through paragraph 4, invites ad hoc technical expert group on indicators. It's a long paragraph. United Kingdom of Great Britain.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I'm just asking for clarification, are we going to go through this section by section under paragraph 4? And if so, I have comments related to subpoint B, but I can wait if you'd like to start at subpoint A.
Okay, we start with A. To take into account the submission received on the traditional knowledge indicators. Australia, followed by Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Thank you, Chair. I have a procedural question. Given this is a recommendation of the working group, it's our understanding that we can't have bracketed text on this particular paragraph, but I'm seeking clarification from the Secretariat on that advice, please, on paragraph 3.
Okay, so first we invite Secretariat to clarify on paragraph 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, indeed. Thank you for the comment. So the option would be indeed in this case to delete the reference, but not to leave it in parentheses.
So is it acceptable for everyone? We delete this paragraph 3? So give the floor to Democratic Republic of the Congo. You have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je voudrais intervenir sur le petit point 1 de ce paragraphe A. En ce qui concerne la gestion de connaissances traditionnelles dans le cadre mondial, nous avons entendu qu'il y avait 4 indicateurs, mais que les travaux étaient en cours. Et ici, on parle encore l'un des 4 indicateurs des connaissances traditionnelles. Je voudrais demander la clarification si les 4 indicateurs ici sont déjà définitivement convenus ou bien. Merci.
Thank you. So I leave this question to Secretariat to explain.
Oui, merci beaucoup pour la question. En fait, concernant les indicateurs qui sont fait référence aux indicateurs sur les connaissances traditionnelles, ces indicateurs n'ont pas encore été opérationnalisés. Et en fait, la question ici, c'est de savoir comment est-ce que ces indicateurs pourraient être revus, mis à jour à la lumière en fait du cadre et donc revus pour qu'ils soient consonants et alignés aux dispositions du cadre. C'est le travail qui devrait être fait avec ces indicateurs, donc ils ne sont pas encore opérationnalisés. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. Democratic Republic of the Congo, you have the floor. You want?
Merci, Monsieur le Président, pour la parole et merci au secrétariat pour la clarification. Donc, à ce niveau, ma proposition est de supprimer le chiffre qui est devant les indicateurs et dire seulement que c'est l'un des indicateurs des connaissances traditionnelles. Merci.
Okay, I first gave the floor to United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Speaking as the Co-Chair of the RTEG, I wonder if I may offer a little clarification, please. Headline indicator 9.2 is within the monitoring framework that was agreed in Montreal as at COP15. The other traditional knowledge indicators are for further development, but they are not mentioned explicitly as headline indicators. And that is why I believe that this indicator is mentioned explicitly, and similarly, headline indicator 21.1, which is also an indicator within the existing monitoring framework, is explicitly mentioned because as part of the RTEG's work, we need to consider how 9.2 may be able to be implemented, and that, of course, will be informed by the study that is mentioned in paragraph 7, but also we need to consider how to think about the incorporation of traditional knowledge within headline indicator 21.1. I hope that provides explanation and will help the discussion.
So, if agreed, then we move to. So, Russia Federation, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, after also explanation of the Chair of the expert group, if our understanding is correct, first of all, that what 2 indicators referred to in section A, small I and small 1 and small 2, those indicators, we know that they already exist. In this case, for small one, we like to join DRC and delete as one of four, because we don't know, we can't preempt. And again, our understanding is that in section B, those two indicators are only suggested. So that's why also later in the text, we also will request to avoid reference for number 4, because we don't know how many indicators. Otherwise, we are happy to see subsection A with a deletion the end of the small I. Thank you.
Okay, noted. Can we agree we move to paragraph 5? Brazil, UK, and Russia.
Thank you, Chair. And my understanding is that we're going to address section by section of paragraph 4. So we have comments on section B, but I ask for clarification as to whether I would need to present those comments now or wait until we finish section A. Thank you.
So if there are any comments, further comments on paragraph A, if not, we can move to B. Democratic Republic of the Congo, you have the floor.
S'il vous plaît, Monsieur le Président, mon commentaire aussi porté sur la linéa B. Donc, peut-être que le Brésil a demandé la parole avant.
So if we have no any further comments on A, then we go through B. Brazil, you have the floor first.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to the colleague from the Democratic Republic of Congo. So regarding section B in paragraph 4, we were a bit puzzled by the new language around little 1, trends in land use change and land tenure, as we feel that this might go beyond the scope of target 22. So we would suggest deleting B and little 1. Especially when we talk about headline indicators, we think that the headline indicators should address the main objective of each target. And the issue of target 22 refer more to how to ensure the full and effective participation. We would suggest then trying to merge the chapeau of section B with little 2. This could be rephrased as follows. To consider gaps in relation to target 22, comma, including on trends in the degree to which traditional knowledge and practices are respected through the full integration and the full and effective participation of IPLCs in the national implementation of the framework. We would further suggest deleting the expression safeguards, because from our perspective, it lacks clarity here, and we do not have the reference to safeguards in target 22. So basically, we would suggest language that is more consistent with the target itself and not to be overly prescriptive with regards to the way the ATAG is expected to conduct its work. Thank you.
Now I give the floor to IPLC. '27 IPLC.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair. At this time, I just wanted to provide a little bit more background information. I'm the co-lead of the IFB Working Group on Indicators. I've been following the work on indicators since 2006. First, with respect to the headline of this paper, indeed, it's the update of 4 adopted traditional knowledge indicators, because COP, through various decisions, has adopted 4 traditional knowledge indicators. With respect to the little I under A, 9.2, which is on traditional occupations, is one of the adopted indicators by the parties, status and trends in the practice of traditional occupations. With respect to little I and little I 1 and 2 under B, the language of the indicators here are the exact language of the indicators adopted by COP. So it is not having revised or changed the language, but just copying the language as adopted by the Conference of Parties. Therefore, it is really through the new program, through the work of ATEG and also the advice of this working group, that further work on those 4 adopted indicators, because the COP decision is for this body to review and update, and the report from this body will go to ATEG and SBSTA 26 for their consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Then I give the floor to UK.
Thank you very much. With regards to the initial text in subpoint B, and recognizing the importance of further developing these indicators to many of the parties here, we think there's value in being quite clear where this consideration will take place. For that reason, we would like to add some text after the words "to consider." So it would read, "to consider, comma, as part of the gap analysis agreed to be undertaken by the ad hoc technical expert group at SBSTA 25, end comma." And that way it's very clear that this additional work that's taking place will be part of that gap analysis that we know is already going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, UK. Now I give the floor to Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. À ce niveau ici, nous avons pensé que le petit point D de ce paragraphe devrait être considéré comme petit point III du point B. C'est-à-dire là où on envisage d'ajouter les indicateurs, il y avait aussi, avant-hier, quand on a eu la session plénière, la nécessité d'ajouter un indicateur sur l'accès des peuples autochtones et des communautés locales au financement pour accroître la mise en œuvre du cadre mondial de la biodiversité économique Montréal. Donc, ma proposition ici, c'est de reformuler un tout petit peu le point D ici et de le ramener comme troisième point au point B, c'est-à-dire les tendances concernant l'accès au financement par les peuples autochtones et les communautés locales pour faciliter la mise en œuvre du cadre mondial de la biodiversité Kunming-Montréal. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Now I give the floor to International Land Coalition.
Thank you. My name is Johanna von Braun. I work for the International Land Coalition. It's a comment about paragraph B as well. Land has long been recognized as central to the realization of the CBD and the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. In decision 15/5, the COP invited the ad hoc open-ended working group on Article 8J to continue the development of the TK indicators. Likewise, in COP decision 15/4, parties said the framework's implementation must ensure that traditional knowledge is respected and documented and well preserved. Despite the cross-cutting importance of land tenure, there is currently no headline indicator on land, an important gap that could undermine our ability to monitor several of the framework's targets. During the negotiation of the KMGBF, it was suggested that adding a land indicator would be too burdensome, but we believe otherwise. In fact, the Sustainable Development Goals provide a well-established land tenure indicator, SDG 1.4.2, with an established methodology and available data. It measures land tenure according to two components, the presence of documentation and perceived tenure security. While this indicator has important gaps in relation to indigenous peoples and local communities, there are ample of data sources that could provide this data that could contextualize the indicator for the Kunming Global Biodiversity Framework. Custodians of the SDG land indicators, including the World Bank and FAO, have offered to support this contextualization. International partners, including the Global Land Observatory, hosted by FAO, the International Fund for Agriculture Development, and data providers Landmarks, Prindex, Landex, and the Indigenous Navigator, and others are already working on this. For the first component of a contextualized indicator, there is already a data set in nearly 100 countries. For the second one, a rural proxy data set is available in 180 countries, while additional community-level data is being developed in many others. Preliminary metadata has been developed among these data collectors and will be shared with the ARTEC and presented with early results at Substat 26. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Switzerland.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. So this is just to support that we would like to keep, paragraph A and then the small I, small 1 and small 2 as it is, because they refer to agreed headline indicator 9.2 and 21.1. And then with regard to B, we would support the addition of the UK, and with this addition, we could support subparagraph B. Thank you.
Russian Federation.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Listening to the exchange of views and also some additional explanations, we tend more to agree with intervention from Brazil. So the chapeau of B has a specific reference to target 22. So we may have a sympathy to indicator on land use changes, which may belong to a totally different target. And also, parties may recall the discussions at COP15 and before, when we were trying to limit the number of headline indicators to a reasonable, manageable number. So we are not sure that we need to elaborate specific additional indicators. Although the small I, Roman I from B, can definitely be considered in the cluster of component indicators or additional indicators. So we prefer to go with a suggestion from Brazil and language from Brazil, but we also don't have any problem to incorporate the suggestion of UK into Brazilian text. Thank you.
Thank you, Russian. Now I give the floor to FAO.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Maud Danser of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. We would like to support the proposal that the International Land Coalition made to keep the land tenure indicator for two reasons. First of all, because of the importance of land tenure for biodiversity. And secondly, as in the International Land Coalition already said, extensive work has been ongoing on this, and it is certainly not a cumbersome addition to the global biodiversity framework with regards the amount of work. Thank you.
Thank you. Russian Federation, you are asking another floor?
Yes, thank you. Again, listening also the explanation from FAO. And as I mentioned, we are not against this indicator. We are not supportive to have it as headline indicator. So, but as a compromise, we can disconnect this indicator from target 22. And we don't mind if we have a new BBs or whatever B section or a new C, which will be specifically talking about this indicator, and leave it for opportunity for indicator expert group to consider it, as well as subset 26 to consider it, but without specifying that it's a headline indicator. And then we will leave it up to the work of the expert group, as well as subset 26 to decide where subset would like to place this indicator. So, but that will allow us to keep the language of indicator in the text, but in a different line. So if this alternative may work, we will be happy to support it.
Thank you, Brazil.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to the International Land Coalition, FAO, for the clarification. We do understand the importance of the issue of land tenure, but as it is framed in the CRP, this would somehow prejudge how Target 22 is expected to be implemented. And there are many other elements in Target 22 that would not be captured by the issue of land tenure. For instance, the issue of land tenure is also important for Target 3 of the GBF and Target 2 as well. So that is why we fear that by already prejudging that land tenure would be a headline indicator for Target 22, this somehow would downplay the importance of this topic for other targets, or in some ways would prejudge the implementation of Target 22. And that is why we think that it's a bit overly prescriptive, and it should be up to the ATAG to identify how to best handle the issue of land tenure. And of course, this would then be assessed by SBSTA. We could go along with the proposal just made by the Russian Federation, that the issue of land tenure would be included in a separate section, such as BBs, would invite the ATAG to consider the relevance of the indicator on land use tenure and so on. But in the original B, we would prefer to stick to our proposal, and we could accommodate the proposal from the UK. But in any case, we would prefer not to have a reference to land use tenure within the scope of Target 22 at this stage, because it would be up to the ATAC to have further discussions on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me consult with the Secretariat for all the previous intervention, then come back shortly. Okay, thanks for your intervention. Now I would like to ask the Secretariat to provide a compromise version to read out for your reference. Thank you, Secretariat.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Starting with the chapeau of this paragraph, invites the ad hoc technical expert group on indicators and the subsidiary body on scientific, technical, and technological advice in their work. Here there would be a deletion to further develop the indicators. So this chapeau would end in their work column to further develop the indicators, take into account the submissions received on traditional knowledge, and it continues until the end of A without any changes. So let me just repeat. Here the proposal is to take the words "to further develop the indicators" from the chapeau of this paragraph and move it to little a, so that little a would read "to further develop the indicators, taking into account," and continues until the end without any changes. Little I would have a deletion. There was a proposal to delete the last part of little I, the words as one of the 4 traditional knowledge indicators. I'm not sure if the co-chairs have already agreed to a way forward for this. I did not hear any changes on little 2i. And then B, taking up one of the proposals that was made, a potential way forward would be to read, to consider gaps in relation to target 22, including on trends in the degree to which traditional knowledge and practices are respected through their full integration and the full and effective participation of indigenous peoples and local communities in the national implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. And here, again, taking up a proposal that was made, and it's taking text that was originally little I. It would be BBs, to consider trends in land use change and land tenure in the traditional territories of indigenous peoples and local communities. The only difference would be to move little I to make a new item in this list. It would be BBs, and starting with to consider. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Secretary. So I open the floor if there are any objection or further modification to this compromise version. European Union.
Muchas gracias, señor copresidente. Nos gustaría solicitar una aclaración respecto a la propuesta planteada, en particular el nuevo subpárrafo B bis que se propone. Hemos entendido que se refería a to consider trends in land use change and so on, pero nos falta saber considerarlo en qué contexto. Sugeriríamos incluir to consider the development or headline indicators or other, or to consider the development of headline indicators on trends and so on. Entendemos que quizás si la propuesta sería más completa y comprensible. Gracias.
Thank you, EU, Russian Federation.
Thank you, Co-Chair. We may go with the last suggestion from EU with the one exception. We delete the word headline. As already was explained, I think, by Brazil before, we don't want to preempt. But otherwise, yes, we can specifically saying that we request the expert group to consider indicator for this particular topic. That's fine. And then again, as we said before, that's up to SABSTA, first of all, to recommend what group of indicators out of 3 this one will belong to. Thank you.
So can we accept the modification by EU supported by Russia? Switzerland.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. I don't have an objection to B bis, but just wanted to clarify, could you read out B again, as it has been suggested, the modification on the B? Thank you.
Okay, Secretary, please read out again the latest version.
The subparagraph B would read, to consider gaps in relation to target 22, including on trends in the degree to which traditional knowledge and practices are respected through their full integration, and the full and effective participation of indigenous peoples and local communities in the national implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework.
Any requests from the floor? Then Brazil.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks to the EU for the proposal, we could go along with their proposal, but we would then suggest, as highlighted by the colleague from the Russian Federation, to keep a more general reference to indicators. Consider the development of indicators. Thank you.
Thank you. Noted. Then if there is no request, we can say we all agree on the new modification by the Secretariat. Then we move to C, to ensure the indigenous people and the local communities. Any objections? If no, we go through paragraph D to consider the need for additional indicators. Democratic Republic of the Congo, followed by Russia.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. C'est cette partie que nous avons demandé de remonter au point B qui vient d'être clôturé et de dire les tendances concernant l'accès des peuples autochtones et des communautés locales au financement pour faciliter la mise en œuvre du cadre mondial de la biodiversité Kunming-Montréal. Merci.
Thank you. Next is Russia.
Thank you, Co-Chair, and I will say our points, but then I will request a colleague from DRC to repeat the suggestion. So our point is at the very end about environmental defenders. We are not aware of agreed international terminology and use of this definition, what's considered as environmental defenders. We're also talking here about funding. And we understand funding for indigenous peoples and local communities. Among them also, we can think about indicator to show how much of this funding came to women and youth. But in this context, putting at the same line, at the same level, women, youth, and environmental defenders, we find a bit out of context and a bit strange. So we basically suggest to put full stop after youth, as actually also we as party may consider the funding for LPLCs, but it's not really clear what kind of funding should come to defenders. When the indicator will be, first of all, for parties to report on. So because of those reasons, we just again suggest to put full stop. And I think that earlier in the discussions, party was also in a similar situation, said after communities, comma, including. So maybe that's also need to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor to DRC.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, pour la parole. En fait, les questionnements posés par la Russie étaient également les nôtres. On ne comprenait pas la place des défenseurs de l'environnement ici, et surtout quand il faut les mélanger avec les peuples autochtones et les communautés locales, les jeunes et les femmes. C'est pour cela que nous avons suggéré une reformulation de ce point. Parce qu'ici, on ne comprend pas comment l'indicateur peut être mesuré tel que formulé ici. On dit y compris un indicateur de suivi des financements reçus par les peuples autochtones et les communautés locales, ça nous semble un peu flou. C'est pourquoi nous avons suggéré ceci, que cet indicateur soit libellé plutôt les tendances concernant l'accès des peuples autochtones et des communautés locales, y compris les femmes et les jeunes, au financement pour faciliter la mise en œuvre du cadre mondial de la biodiversité Kunming-Montréal. Ça, c'était la première partie de notre intervention. La deuxième partie, c'est de déplacer ces points D ici vers le point B, que ce soit le troisième sous-point de point B, pour qu'on envisage aussi cet indicateur. Merci.
Okay, any disagreement to DRC's proposal, objections? Now I give the floor to Colombia because you were in the pre-request list.
Gracias, señor presidente. Colombia reitera que el lenguaje relacionado con Environmental Defenders viene de la meta 22, donde el concepto completo es Environmental Human Rights Defenders. Y preferimos mantener esta referencia en el literal D, dado que en el contexto de la meta 22 se pretende garantizar la participación plena, equitativa, inclusiva y efectiva, no solamente de los pueblos indígenas y comunidades locales, mujeres, niñas y jóvenes, sino también de los defensores de los derechos ambientales. Entonces, quisiéramos al final del literal D mantener la referencia a Environmental Human Rights Defenders, full stop. Y sobre la propuesta de República Democrática del Congo, podríamos aceptar ese mismo párrafo bajo el B o mantenerlo donde está con el mismo lenguaje que tiene. Gracias.
Thank you, Colombia. Now I give the floor to Russia.
So just would like to comment on a suggestion from DRC. So we are happy to proceed with the language as suggested by DRC. The only difference will be we prefer to keep it as a separate standalone paragraph because B now has an element related to specific target towards mostly a headline indicator, and we don't want to bring another one there. So let's use the DRC's language and keep it as a separate one. Thank you.
Thank you. EU, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señor copresidente. En la misma línea de la intervención de Colombia, la Unión Europea y sus Estados miembros quieren que se retenga la referencia a los defensores de derechos ambientales al final de este subpárrafo por la importancia crucial que tienen para la defensa de la biodiversidad, por el vínculo con las referencias que hay al respecto en el propio Marco Mundial de Biodiversidad y porque en este caso estamos haciendo una propuesta para considerar la necesidad de indicadores adicionales. Por tanto, si hay algún reto para desarrollar este indicador, se verá en el contexto en el que se pide, pero aquí entendemos que debemos hacer esa solicitud completa y pedir toda la información, incluyendo a los Environmental Human Rights Defenders. Apoyamos, por tanto, como Colombia, mantener esta referencia. Gracias.
Thank you, EU. Next is Switzerland.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. It gets a bit tricky to follow all the changes and amendments, but we're trying to follow. So, as mentioned, we would also like to keep the paragraph D separate, as it has been mentioned by Russia. We can support, when it comes to the content, what has been mentioned by the EU. Now, my general comment would be, now we are starting to ask quite a lot, or invite the ARTEC to consider quite a lot. For those who have been at Substat 25, we already asked and invited the ARTEC to do quite a lot until Substat 26, which will take place just in a few months from now. And so there is just a lot to do for the ARTEC, and we thought, since the co-chair of the ARTEC is here, it might be of value to hear a bit how he sees all the work, and just that we understand a bit, not that we without knowing give too much burden to the ARTEC. Thank you.
Thank you, Switzerland. Then DRC again.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, pour la parole. En fait, ces CRP que nous sommes en train d'examiner concernent le lien entre la diversité biologique et la diversité culturelle. Et les indicateurs concernent les connaissances traditionnelles. Alors, c'est pourquoi, dans cet indicateur, nous ne pouvons pas appuyer le fait qu'on y mette les défenseurs de l'environnement. En fait, ça sera même biaisé l'indicateur. On veut voir le financement qui est dirigé vers les peuples autochtones et les communautés locales. Point barre. Il ne s'agit pas ici de voir tous les éléments de la cible 22, mais de voir les liens entre la biodiversité et la diversité culturelle. Pour cela, nous revenons encore sur notre formulation qui concerne les peuples autochtones et les communautés locales. S'il y a d'autres partis qui veulent associer à ce niveau les défenseurs de l'environnement, ils ont à donner des arguments solides et à formuler un indicateur à part. Mais cet indicateur devra concerner uniquement les peuples autochtones et les communautés locales. Et pour finir, donc je peux être flexible et aller avec la proposition de la Russie de laisser cet indicateur à sa place, mais de tenir compte de notre reformulation qui consiste à voir les tendances concernant l'accès des peuples autochtones et des communautés locales, y compris les jeunes et les femmes, au financement pour faciliter la mise en œuvre du cadre mondial de la biodiversité économique Montréal. Je vous remercie.
Thank you for your intervention, also your flexibility. Now, Russian again.
Thank you, Co-Chair. I just like to draw attention of parties, and also based on what Colombia was saying, referring to Target 22, colleagues, words and terms, they make difference and they have meaning. Target 22 requests to protect environmental human rights defenders. First, there's nothing about environmental defenders here. Second, the target is talking about protection and not about funding. So we don't see the language in this paragraph we are discussing relevant to target 22. Because target 22 is talking about different group of people and requesting different actions applying to this group of people. So that's why we don't see the reason to have environmental protectors in the context of funding for LPLCs. Thank you.
Thank you, Russia. Then UK.
Thank you very much indeed, Co-Chair. Thank you to Switzerland for asking the question about the capacity of the Artec and speaking as the Co-Chair. I think there's 2 or 3 comments that I would like to make, if I may, please. The first is that the Artec is approximately halfway through its work, as I said in my presentation on Monday. We have 2 online meetings and a face-to-face meeting, plus obviously work between those meetings in order to complete an already very full mandate. It's worth noting that we are going to be working very hard to do that. If I may, I would like to refer to paragraph 2 of the L8 paper from Substa 25, because we did have, as Switzerland says, a lot of discussion at Substa 25 about the priorities of the work for the Artec to continue. And that paragraph 2 in the L8 paper requests the expert group to continue the work mandated in subparagraphs 1AI to III of the Annex to Decision 15.5 of 19th December 2022 to identify and provide technical advice to fill critical gaps to improve the monitoring framework, in particular on headline indicators that do not have an existing methodology, and, time permitting, on elements of the targets and goals not covered by any headline indicator. And effectively, that asks the Artec to undertake a gap analysis, but not to develop new headline indicators. We are able to do work on trying to improve the monitoring framework as was decided in Decision 15.5, but I think it is probably too much to ask us to develop from scratch new headline indicators that were not within that decision. And therefore, I think it's actually really important to be clear that what we can do is to consider possible indicators, and we can try as far as we can to provide parties and other stakeholders with advice. But I think we need to be clear that adding more tasks, particularly if they are asking the Artec to do further development work, will be a stretch. I will make one other comment, if I may please, specifically relating to funding, which is that within the Substa 25/2 paper that was considered by Substa 25, there were a number of questions about binary indicators, and there were suggestions under a couple of those that there should be information requested from parties about funding. Parties decided they did not want to do that at Substa 25 and bracketed that text. And I think it's one of the things that's really important here is that targets, I think it's 19 and 20, will have indicators that are talking about financing, and parties are perhaps justifiably concerned about whether or not that needs further information about funding for other targets as well, or whether that is best dealt with directly in terms of the indicators for the funding targets. I hope that clarification helps. I hope that explanation of the work that we are undertaking helps. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I give the floor to Canada.
Thank you, Co-Chair. We would like to propose a solution for the current issue. So After local communities, we could add including, then women and youth and environmental human rights defenders, and then we can add of indigenous peoples and from local communities. Thank you, Co-Chair.
Thank you, Canada, for your advice. Now I give the floor to UNDP.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. On a point of clarification on the definition of environmental human rights defenders, over the last 2 years, a joint UN task force has been developing a guidance note on this, and I quote, "Guidance note for UN resident coordinators and country teams supporting governments to better protect environmental human rights defenders." This guidance note was developed as part of the UN Secretary General's call to action on the rights of future generations and climate justice, in direct consultation with environmental human rights defenders and UN country teams over the course of the past several years. French, Spanish, and potentially other UN language versions will follow. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I give the floor to Togo.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. J'interviens tout simplement parce que je tentais de comprendre un peu l'enjeu concernant les défenseurs des droits, mais j'ai cru savoir que les pays avaient déjà exprimé donc leurs préoccupations par rapport à cette question, mais je vois que ça se revient toujours. Alors, je voudrais soulever donc cette préoccupation que nous partageons, la préoccupation donc du collègue de la RDC, je pense que de la Russie également, puisque à notre sens, ça peut biaiser un tout petit peu la compréhension qu'on a donc de ce texte. Nous ne refusons pas qu'il y ait des indicateurs pour ce qui concerne les défenseurs, donc en tout cas des droits de l'homme ou des défenseurs de l'environnement, etc. Il y a plein donc d'indicateurs. Il y a une raison fondamentale de l'avoir. Alors, mais est-ce que c'est sa place ici? C'est la question qui est posée. Est-ce que c'est la place ici d'avoir ces indicateurs? Parce qu'il ne faille pas simplement vouloir avoir des indicateurs pour les avoir et les mettre un peu partout où on pense, non. Mais je pense que ici, comme c'est un zoom qui est mis sur donc, les peuples autochtones et les communautés locales, et notamment pour ce qui concerne donc, ce document, le lien donc, que nous avons avec l'importance donc, de ces questions, nous ne pensons pas que ce serait utile donc de pouvoir garder cela ici. Qu'à cela ne tienne, quand vous regardez la cible 22, vous constaterez qu'il y a d'autres groupes donc, de personnes qui sont également citées. Je vais parler par exemple des personnes handicapées, des questions des enfants. Bon, pourquoi toutes ces questions, pourquoi ces groupes-là ne sont pas en même temps cités dans les cibles, dans les indicateurs en question? Et l'accent va être mis simplement sur d'autres personnes. Bon, je pense qu'il fallait vraiment être il faut le débat et faire en sorte que ce que nous sommes en train de décider soit beaucoup plus précis. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. Next floor give to Algeria.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, pour la parole. Donc, j'appuie mon collègue du Togo parce que je relis donc la cible 22 et tel que rédigé ici, donc le défenseur de l'homme, de l'environnement, excusez-moi, n'a pas lieu d'être ici. Donc, merci.
Thank you, Algeria. Then it's Russia again.
So, Co-Chair, I was attentively listening to the intervention of the Co-Chair of the expert group, who raised very important issues, first of all, around the capacity of the group to work on indicators, especially new. Second, on actually reminding us the discussion a few weeks ago in Nairobi, where it's true that parties were not interested to see funding indicators. And the last point again on, I hear UNDP on environmental human rights defenders, and Canada suggested this language. So again, it's not a language about environmental defenders. But look even at the explanation of targets shown on the CBD website, in accordance also with the kind of approaches to indicators. The indicator there is actually suggesting to measure trends and the number of defenders killed. There's nothing there about funding them. So actually our suggestion is very simple. Based on the overload of the group on indicators, we simply delete this paragraph. And also based on the attitude of parties towards indicators on funding at SBSTA. So our suggestion and our request is to delete this paragraph. Thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor to Colombia.
Gracias, señor presidente. Colombia quiere reiterar que el párrafo D debe permanecer en este texto por las razones que antes mencioné y tal vez para compartir algunas ideas para los colegas que me precedieron, aclarar que el espíritu de la Meta 22 está claro en el texto de la Meta 22. Cuando nosotros hablamos de participación plena, equitativa, inclusiva y efectiva y responsable con el género, estamos hablando de la necesidad de garantizar que los diferentes actores que tienen que ver con la conservación y el uso sostenible de la biodiversidad, especialmente en los países en desarrollo, necesitan tener unas herramientas suficientes y necesarias para garantizar su debida participación en la conservación y el uso sostenible de la biodiversidad. Y en ese sentido, esos medios para garantizar la participación plena y efectiva, y como dice la Meta 22 al final de la meta, una completa protección de los defensores de los derechos ambientales, incluye la financiación, incluye tener los medios de implementación. Tenemos casos, y creo que lo hemos visto acá, lo hemos discutido en el marco de los diferentes eventos que hemos tenido paralelos a las negociaciones, donde hay casos reales, de personas reales, que están sufriendo por defender los derechos y relacionados con el ambiente para la conservación y el uso de la biodiversidad. Y esas personas no tienen los medios para garantizar seguir ejerciendo sus derechos y seguir ejerciendo la protección de la conservación de la biodiversidad y el uso sostenible. Es por eso que es muy importante conservar este párrafo que nos va a permitir tener la discusión de cómo podemos explorar indicadores adicionales que incluyan el monitoreo de los recursos dirigidos no solamente a los pueblos indígenas y comunidades locales, sino también a las mujeres, a los jóvenes y a esos defensores de los derechos ambientales. De manera que Colombia no puede aceptar que se borre este párrafo. Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you. Let me consult with the Secretary and be back to you for the solution. Thank you, all the interventions, but we still have some gaps. Now I propose a compromise proposal read as to consider the need for additional possible indicators for monitoring funding to IPLCs Is that agreeable? So I give the floor to Togo.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je pense que la proposition que vous venez de faire, c'était même ce pourquoi donc j'avais demandé la parole. Et ça reflète exactement ce que nous avons souhaité avoir. Mais qu'à cela ne tienne, Monsieur le Président, peut-être que nous ne comprenons pas très rapidement. Les pays n'ont jamais demandé ou n'ont jamais dit qu'ils ne devaient pas avoir des indicateurs pour le suivi de ce qui concerne les défenseurs donc, des droits, que ce soit pour l'environnement et les droits humains. Nous avons déjà, tout le monde est d'accord par rapport à cela. Mais quand vous regardez le titre du document que nous sommes en train d'examiner, on nous parle du lien que nous devons avoir entre la protection donc, ou la conservation de la biodiversité et la culture. Tout ce qui nous concerne ici, c'est de voir comment les peuples autochtones et les communautés locales donc, doivent pouvoir contribuer à cela, leur niveau donc, de lien. C'est pour cela que nous nous posons des questions. Si nous mettons tout en même temps ici, est-ce que cela va être pertinent? C'est ça un peu la question. Donc nous sommes tout à fait d'accord avec la proposition que le co-président vient de faire. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Okay, just ask the floor. Any objection to my proposals? If no, Russian, you have the floor, followed by Colombia.
Co-chair, no objection yet, but please, can you read it again?
Okay, it will be read as to consider the need for additional possible indicators for monitoring funding to IPLCs.
Thank you, Co-chair. So the text is okay with us. That doesn't, of course, fix the issue of additional work and burden, both for the indicator group and for SABSTA. But as language is flexible enough in terms of to consider, and you may very quickly consider this issue, so we can live with your text.
Thank you for your flexibility. I give the floor to Colombia.
Gracias, señor presidente. Disculpe, pero no puedo estar de acuerdo con su propuesta. Su propuesta no tiene en consideración ninguno de mis argumentos ni sugerencias. La única opción que podría aceptar es que tuviéramos un párrafo adicional que hablara específicamente de los indicadores para los defensores ambientales inmediatamente después del D. Tendríamos un párrafo adicional que dijera to consider the need for additional indicators, including an indicator for monitoring regarding means of implementation to full protection of environmental human rights defenders. Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you. Let me consult with the Secretary. So any objection from the floor to Colombia's proposal? Russian.
Yes, we have objections. So in this case, again, we prefer to delete indicator completely. And we have also a concern that parties give their own interpretation of targets. As again, target 22 says nothing around providing means of implementation for environmental human rights defenders or providing for the full participation, etc. That's all related to indigenous communities as well as women and girls, children and youth and persons with disabilities. And separately, there is a task to ensure the full protection of defenders. So that's how we read the target, and the interpretation provided by Colombia is going beyond the limits of this target. So that's why, again, we may at some point think about the indicator as provided on the CBD website for the trends in number of defenders killed. So because that relates specifically to the ensuring the full protection, but we will not go towards the direction of any indicators related to funding or providing means of implementation or full participation of defenders, because that's not in line with the GBF. Thank you.
Thank you. Togo.
Monsieur le Président, nous avons déjà donné des arguments pour lesquels ça ne serait pas pertinent d'avoir cet indicateur ici. Tout de même, nous n'avons pas refusé qu'il y ait peut-être de tels indicateurs avec l'ensemble donc des autres travaux qui auront ultérieurement. Nous pouvons les avoir, mais pas ici. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. After consult with the Secretary and listening all the comments, as far as we could get at this point, either you accept my proposal or we delete this paragraph. We don't have other options. So if there is no agreement on my proposal, then we have to delete this paragraph. Okay, I give the floor to DRC.
Monsieur le Président, beaucoup de partis ont soutenu votre proposition, la RDC aussi, donc on peut aller avec votre proposition. Merci.
Colombia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Colombia, no, agree with your proposal. We can accept to keep the paragraph D as it was at the beginning of the discussion. And otherwise, we can include the proposal that we just made regarding the human rights defenders. I want to clarify that I don't include in reference to funding in my proposal. I include in means of implementation. And as I said, the target 22 make reference to full and equitable, inclusive, effective, and gender responsive participation, and ensure the full protection of environmental human rights defenders. So probably in the proposal, the new paragraph could be include means of implementation, or at least ensure the full, equitable, inclusive, effective, and gender responsive. So we need to have something to measure how in the context of the GBF, we are ensuring the full, equitable, inclusive, and effective and gender-responsive participation, and ensure the full protection for environmental human rights defenders. Thank you, Co-Chair.
Thank you, Colombia. I give the floor to Canada.
Thank you, Co-Chair. I really Canada believes that the middle ground would be to make this about Indigenous peoples and local communities. So that's why our addition was human rights defenders, specifically of Indigenous people and local communities at the end. We truly believe this is the middle ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Canada. Let me consult with the Secretariat. Thank you. So taking into account all the intervention and after consultation with the Secretary, I make a new proposal for the paragraph D to be read as, if possible, my final compromise, to consider the need for additional indicators, including an indicator for monitoring funding to indigenous people and local communities, full stop, because this is all agreed. But others, since we don't have an agreement, if we want to insist something, we have to delete the whole. So the floor is yours, whether we keep what I suggest or we delete all. Because there is no consensus, then we cannot move on. Okay. So we have to agree, otherwise we will stay here to analyze discussion without any progress. So Russell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Co-Chair, and thank you, Secretariat, for your effort to find a solution. Again, we indicated before that we prefer deletion of it, and we gave reasons. But again, for the spirit of compromise, we can live with this your suggestion as well. And if it's acceptable, so that will be okay for us as a compromise. Thank you.
So I gave the floor to Colombia as a priority.
Gracias, Co-Chair. Realmente no puedo entender cómo esa es una propuesta que considere lo que hemos expresado aquí en este grupo de trabajo. Quisiera tal vez que tuviéramos en consideración la propuesta hecha por Canadá. Colombia podría aceptar en aras del consenso la propuesta que ha hecho Canadá de incluir después de local communities, environmental, human rights defenders from indigenous peoples and local communities. Gracias, Co-Chair.
Okay, we have the DRC. You have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Comme vous avez dit que c'est votre dernière tentative et qu'on vient de constater qu'il n'y a toujours pas de consensus, donc nous sommes d'accord avec la dilution, c'est-à-dire on supprime carrément ces paragraphes ou bien ces points ici et on avance. Merci.
Thank you. I give the floor to Guatemala.
Gracias, señor copresidente. En aras de llegar a una aveniencia donde todos y todas podamos llegar a un consenso, hago la siguiente propuesta de redacción. Como ya tenemos consenso en lo que dice considerar la necesidad de indicadores adicionales, incluidos un indicador para el seguimiento de la financiación a los pueblos indígenas y las comunidades locales, la sugerencia es la siguiente: como parte de los defensores de medio ambiente, incluidas las mujeres y los jóvenes. Este sentido de esta redacción quiere dar a entender que, si bien es cierto, el indicador va a estar dirigido a pueblos indígenas y comunidades locales, no podemos obviar que ellos son parte de los defensores de medio ambiente y que día a día están arriesgando su vida a nivel territorial por defender la diversidad biológica. Muchas gracias.
Togo.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Nous avions sollicité la parole pour pouvoir soutenir votre proposition. Par rapport à la position du Guatemala de tout à l'heure, nous trouvons que c'est pertinent s'il s'agissait donc des femmes et des jeunes, À ce niveau, il n'y a pas de problème, puisque même dans le texte, dans certains textes déjà, nous avions déjà compris qu'il y a des jeunes et des femmes, mais c'est des jeunes et des femmes, donc des communautés locales ou des peuples autochtones. Pour ça, il n'y a aucun problème. Donc, à la rigueur, si c'est les jeunes et les femmes, ça c'est facilement ajoutable. On peut facilement ajouter cela. Mais pour la proposition du Canada, soutenue, donc réclamée par la Colombie, nous pensons que ça revient encore à la même chose. Qu'on mette les droits, les défenseurs donc des droits à l'intérieur ou à la fin, ça revient encore à la même chose. Donc nous soutenons donc votre proposition et donc à la rigueur, ça serait donc la suppression. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Russian, please.
Thank you, Co-Chair, and I promise it's also my last attempt to find a solution because the next one, there is no attempt just simply to delete. I would like to maybe give my understanding of your elegant solution because first of all, you are very cleverly saving the request for this indicator in general. Secondly, your suggestion to put full stop after indigenous peoples means that all of them are included. And I also like to draw attention of some parties who seems to forget about one element of Target 22, which refer also to disabled people. I don't know why we don't care about them, but care about defenders. So I think that your suggestion is a very elegant way forward, basically allowed to bring everything what's needed into it. So again, we support it. Thank you.
Thank you. UK?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are seeing that there's difficulty in driving a consensus around this issue. While we certainly could accept the compromise text, we just wanted to remind parties that in the absence of any text on this issue, on the issue of environmental rights defenders, we acknowledge that the ATEG itself is doing this gap analysis, which is to look at all of the gaps in the headline indicators. And if there isn't information already on this, which I think is why we're talking about it, they will be considering it whether or not we have language in this decision to specifically ask them to do so. And kind of with that explanation, I wonder if it would help then for parties to be willing to delete this element of text, because the gap analysis will show all the gaps, and the ATEG will be considering all of those gaps.
Okay, so I listen all the intervention. It seems that we don't have consensus. It's clearly we don't have any consensus at this point. So if we want to continue our work, so the only way is to delete this text. If there's no further comments, I move to next paragraph. Paragraph E, to consider the need for gender disaggregated data for all indicators related to the framework. Any comments on this paragraph E? Russian, please.
Thank you, Co-Chair. We have 2 points here. And the first line, we like to see the language the following way: to consider the need for data disaggregated by sex. Some people are talking about, I don't know, 87, 42, 64 genders. So we are not sure we can disaggregate this way. So the second and the second last line, we are talking, and this may be seeking clarification, saying for traditional knowledge of all women and girls. Means every single individual in all indigenous and local communities. We are confused with this word all. We think we can delete it. Thank you.
Thank you. DRC, please.
Oui, merci Monsieur le Président pour la parole. Nous souscrivons aux propositions présentées par la Fédération russe et nous demandons juste ici comme une remarque rédactionnelle que quand on parle ici du cadre, qu'on parle du cadre mondial de la biodiversité Kunming-Montréal. Parce qu'ici, ça peut prêter confusion avec, par exemple, le cadre de suivi, etc. Merci.
Okay, I give the floor to Secretary for clarification.
Oui, oui, monsieur, merci, Monsieur le Président. Oui, on prend note donc de la correction qui doit être faite partout dans le texte concernant l'intitulé qui va être révisé pour que ça soit accordé de façon éditoriale. Merci.
Okay, with this, we move to next paragraph 6, stress the importance of community-based monitoring and the information system. DRC, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je pensais qu'on allait plutôt passer au paragraphe 5, s'il vous plaît.
Yes, we were discussing with paragraph 5, but there is no further comments. If you have more comments, you can go on.
Oui, merci beaucoup pour la parole. En fait, ici, je voudrais juste essayer de rappeler la nécessité d'assurer l'ordre hiérarchique des parties prenantes dans ce paragraphe. Il est vrai que on vise principalement les peuples autochtones et les communautés locales, mais avant tout, ils ont une identité nationale. C'est pourquoi je voudrais suggérer ici qu'on commence par encourager les partis, les autres gouvernements, les gouvernements infranationaux et puis voilà, les peuples autochtones et les communautés locales, comme d'habitude dans les documents de la Convention. Merci.
It's fine with us. So unless there is any objection, then we can adopt your proposal. With this, we can move to paragraph 6, stress the importance of community-based monitoring and the information system. If no, we move to Brazil. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And during the opening during the plenary session where we had the first reading of this agenda item, we had submitted a proposal that we did not see reflected in the CRP. So after the second line, at the end of the second line, the monitoring framework, we had suggested including a specific sentence which would read as follows, comma, while acknowledging the need to engage IPLCs in the development and management of those information systems, comma, as well as the need of enhanced international cooperation to address technical and financial gaps in developing countries. We have mentioned this in our opening statement, so we hope we can move forward with our amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. I give the floor to DRC.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Tout en souscrivant à ce que vient de dire le Brésil, nous pensons qu'ici, c'est aussi intéressant, après le cadre de suivi, qu'on précise que c'est un cadre de suivi du cadre mondial de la biodiversité économique Montréal. Merci.
Okay, any objection to the previous modification from Brazil and also from DRC? If no objection, we move on to next paragraph 8. Recommends that it is the 16th meeting. Sorry, I missed the European Union and Russia. You have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señor copresidente. Agradeceríamos si la Secretaría pudiera leer cómo queda el texto con las enmiendas propuestas, puesto que ha sido un poco rápido. Muchas gracias.
Noted. Russia?
So, Co-Chair, are we on paragraph 7 or?
Oh, I tried to finalize paragraph 7, but you asked to reread of this paragraph.
Okay,
so you are
will...
open for paragraph 7 or 8, but no more.
Yeah, I will come later on paragraph 7. Thank you.
Okay, maybe we can request the Secretariat to read out the revised version of paragraph 7.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. I have here paragraph 6. In any case, it may have changed. It's just that it's the paragraph starting on stresses the importance. And my understand, and in Brazil, please correct me if I missed anything, is that at the end of this paragraph, after the word framework, there would be a comma, and then I will read the new text as I captured it, while acknowledging the need to engage indigenous peoples and local communities in the management of those information systems, as well as the need to engage in cooperation to address technical and financial gaps in developing countries.
Thank you. Brazil?
Thank you, Co-Chair, and sorry to take the floor again. Just to clarify some language issues, our proposal would actually read as, while acknowledging the need to engage indigenous peoples and local communities in the development and management of those information systems, comma, as well as the need of enhanced international cooperation to address technical and financial gaps in developing countries. So just to provide some minor corrections. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. I think your text is noted without any objections. So we come to paragraph 7. Russian, you said that you will have some comments.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Yes, 2 comments. I think line 4, starting with a review of. So similar to what we said before, we like to delete the number 4. So it will read simply a review of the traditional knowledge indicators. And the very last line, we okay to send it for consideration by the 26th meeting of SBSTA, but we suggest to delete reference to the Conference of the Parties, as actually SBSTA will decide whether it will send to COP, will not send to COP, so we should put full stop here with the SBSTA 26th meeting. Thank you.
UK, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. We have another proposal to make to help clarify how we best think this review can feed into the work of the ATEG. And it would be in addition to what is, I believe, line 5, the line that begins headline, component, and complementary indicators of the monitoring framework. And after framework, we would add the following. With the aim of providing the outputs of this review to the ad hoc technical experts group in time for its second face-to-face meeting, currently planned for March 2020, to allow the ATEG on indicators to take the work into account in formulating its recommendations to the subsidiary body on scientific, technical, and it goes on from there. So we're deleting the text that reads, taking into account the work conducted by the ad hoc technical expert group, all the way up to the reference to the subsidiary body. And this way, and I think I may have said 2023, but I mean... You said 2020, you meant 2024, yes, sorry. The face-to-face meeting is planned for March 2024. And I'm happy to send that in writing if it's helpful to the Secretariat.
So the proposal from Russia and the UK is acceptable to the parties? Okay, noted, and will be adopted in the text. And then we move to paragraph 8. Recommend that at its 16 meetings. Any comments on this paragraph? If no, the last page of this document, we can go through paragraph by paragraph. First paragraph is underscoring the critical importance of engaging indigenous people. Any comments on this paragraph? Togo, you have the floor.
Et merci, Monsieur le Président. Je m'excuse parce que j'avais des préoccupations pour ce qui concerne le paragraphe qui dit rappelant à sa décision, ainsi de suite. Donc, c'était ma préoccupation se portait là, mais je pense que vous êtes déjà un peu en avance. Est-ce que vous me permettez de revenir là-dessus? J'avais pensé que c'était la première partie du paragraphe, mais apparemment c'était les deux. Donc, du coup, on est... Alors, je suppose que le co-président me permet de continuer. Ma préoccupation est simplement de comprendre la pertinence Est-ce que je peux continuer?
Yes, go ahead.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Alors, donc, je voudrais comprendre la pertinence donc, de du fait de rappeler donc, cette décision qui, en fait, porte sur les objectifs d'Aichi. Donc, j'ai tenté donc, de comprendre, mais peut-être que le secrétariat pourrait rafraîchir un peu ma mémoire pour que je comprenne la pertinence donc, de pouvoir faire ce rappel.
Okay, I give the floor to Secretary for clarification related to the HE biodiversity target.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président. En fait, pour la question, c'est simplement pour ce texte préambulaire pour rappeler que les indicateurs concernant les connaissances traditionnelles avaient été développés dans un cadre précédent qui était le cadre stratégique de la Convention. C'est simplement dans ce sens-là que ce texte préambulaire est formulé.
Thank you. Togo, you want to ask the floor again?
Tout à fait, Monsieur le Président. Effectivement, tel que c'est libellé, si quelqu'un, en tout cas un étudiant, le document, ça paraît un peu bizarre de voir une décision donc, qui portait sur quelque chose qui est effectivement passé, puisque aujourd'hui nous sommes avec un nouveau cadre. Alors on se demande pour quelles raisons il faut forcément donc faire ce rappel. Si ces indicateurs n'ont pas forcément un lien direct avec ce que nous sommes en train de faire, est-ce que vraiment c'est pertinent? À la rigueur, si nous voulons simplement montrer que cette décision avait effectivement fait cas de ce type d'indicateurs concernant les communautés locales et les peuples autochtones, il va falloir peut-être le préciser. Et là, peut-être qu'on pourrait nous donner un peu du temps pour qu'on puisse faire une proposition qui va donner ce lien de façon beaucoup plus précise, pour juste rappeler que c'est vrai, la décision elle est passée, mais elle avait quelque chose d'important en ce qui concerne les indicateurs, mais puisque ces indicateurs, d'ailleurs, en fait, ne portent pas sur ce que le nouveau cadre en question. C'est en cela que nous nous posons vraiment la question sur la pertinence donc, de faire ce rappel.
Thank you, Toko, for your questions. This paragraph refers to the decision 10/2 annex indicated in the bottom of this page. I wonder if it's helpful. Okay, I give the floor to Russian Federation.
So, Co-Chair, we have two more kind of editorial comments and one question, but also in reaction to what Togo was saying. Yes, I may agree it's a little bit strange to see just a reference to Aichi only. Maybe at least we need to say something like recalling the previous work of the convention on ILPLC-related indicators, including its decision, so at least to give a context, and maybe also give a reference here to some COP15 decision, that it will be at least seen the historical and the current one. Editorial comment for this paragraph is that we normally do not refer to a particular date of the decision, so I think referring to a number is enough. And I saw it in several other documents. I think that can be fixed by the Secretariat. And another editorial one, currently it looks like we have 4 preamble paragraphs. So let's put number 1, at least for the last paragraph, that we have at least 1 operational paragraph of such a draft decision. And related question, some CRPs and some decisions coming from this meeting seems like this one. Are we seriously sending it to be converted into a standalone decision of the COP, a 4-paragraph decision? So the request to the Secretariat and question to the Secretariat, if there is a plan after this meeting based on adopted recommendation to consolidate it into 1 paper for COP16, bringing together those different elements as related to LPLCs. And if it can be structured through the different chapters, but to make our life easier in terms of number of documents, but also providing a little bit better integration of different parts related to LPLCs. So I hope that the Secretariat can think about it and go this way in preparation for COP16. Thank you.
Okay, Russian, for your contribution. With this, can we move to next paragraph 1, underscoring the critical importance of engaging indigenous people and the local communities. Any comments? If not, I move to next paragraph, recognizing the contribution of community-based monitoring and information system. Any comments? Brazil.
Thank you, Chair. And in line with our previous intervention, we would suggest adding the same amendments we had for paragraph 6 of the recommendation of the working group here. So after information, we would add comma, while acknowledging the need to engage indigenous peoples and local communities in the development and management of those information systems, comma, as well as the need of enhanced international cooperation to address the technical and financial gaps in developing countries. Thank you.
Thank you. Any objection to Brazil's proposal? If no, I hope Secretariat can take in consideration of this new wording. Then we move to next paragraph, last paragraph, encouraging parties, other government, subnational government, local authorities, and the relevant organizations. Any comments to this paragraph? Okay, I see no comments. Then we can adopt CRP 2. Thank you for your cooperation. Now, sorry. We proceed with? Now we proceed CRP.3. I think everyone have the document. Draft recommendation submitted by the chair. So then I go paragraph by paragraph. The first is ad hoc open-ended intersessional. Okay, we come to the substance paragraph recording the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework is to be understood. So DRC, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, pour la parole accordée. Il était prévu que la plénière se clôture à 18 h parce que justement, on a un groupe de contact à partir de 19 h. Je voudrais que vous puissiez nous donner en fait la lumière sur ce qui nous attend avec les 2 documents qui restent pour que nous puissions savoir jusqu'où on va. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you for your comments. After consult with the Secretariat, our session will be end on 18:20, just 6 minutes later. So if there is no comments on this paragraph, then I move to another paragraph recording also the framework is to be implemented. Then, if there is no comments from the parties, I move to another paragraph having considered the note by the Secretariat. Point 1, take one of the observations. 2, request the Secretariat to continue to inform the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. I have the Swatini, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to make my contribution in the previous paragraph, which started also recording also in the 1+last line where it says the rights that indigenous peoples currently have. We would like to also include indigenous people and local communities.
Is it acceptable to the parties or objection? If now I go to, so Togo first, then I give the floor to Canada.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Ma préoccupation, elle est déjà soulignée par l'Iswatini. Je ne sais pas, comme vous étiez sur l'autre paragraphe, s'il faut que j'attende pour qu'on finisse l'autre partie. Puisque j'avais, à part le paragraphe 2, l'autre paragraphe sur lequel vous étiez avant que Swatini ne demande la parole.
Thank you. I give the floor to Canada.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Apologies. That was just a really quick intervention from the distinguished delegate from Eswatini, and we didn't hear it clearly. So we would ask if it could be repeated. Thank you.
Swatini, you repeat?
Thank you, Co-Chair. In the one but last line, where it says the rights that indigenous peoples currently have, we would like to add indigenous peoples and local community currently have. Thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor to Norway.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We understand that the new text from Eswatini is suggested after United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. We read this as referring to the actual declaration, and that's the actual name of the declaration, United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. So we wouldn't support any reference to local communities in that context. Thank you, Chair.
Swatini, you have the floor.
Thank you, Co-Chair. In hearing what the delegate who have spoken just before me have said, we will kindly request that we end this paragraph after human rights law, because once you add the aspect that comes after that, then it is our belief that you cannot talk of the rights of indigenous people in this context without talking to the rights of local communities. So if we are to really want to have that paragraph, then it should end after human rights law. Thank you.
Thank you, Swatini. Then I give the floor to Togo.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je partage entièrement la suggestion que vient de faire Eswatini. Et je voudrais préciser qu'il faudrait que nos décisions reflètent également le contexte, puisque effectivement, il peut y avoir une décision spécifique peut-être sur ce qui concerne les peuples autochtones. Et à partir du moment où nous sommes dans le contexte de la Convention sur la diversité biologique, et il nous semble important de pouvoir ne pas faire la séparation, parce que nous sommes dans un contexte précis où nous avons estimé que les questions de conservation donc de la biodiversité est tellement important et prend en compte les deux composantes. Donc nous sommes dans un cas précis, nous pouvons évoquer la décision qui porte sur les peuples autochtones, mais dans l'ensemble, les communications et les informations doivent prendre en compte et les peuples autochtones et les communautés locales. Maintenant, on peut citer la décision, mais ajouter ce que Eswatini a proposé. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. I give the floor to Canada, EU, Uganda, then we close this session.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Yeah, when we were looking at these two new paragraphs, we were noting where they came from. And we noted that the first paragraph, and I understand that it's already closed, but just for reference, the first paragraph comes straight out of the Kunming to Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework text. The second paragraph, we were looking for where it comes from, and we did find it not in its, well, the first, all of the information that's there comes from Decision 15.6, but it actually leaves out some points. It actually reads in the text of the GBF, and I quote, "The framework's implementation must ensure that the rights, knowledge, including traditional knowledge associated with biodiversity, innovations, worldviews, values, and practices of Indigenous peoples and local communities are respected and documented and preserved with their free, prior, and informed consent, including through their full and effective participation in decision-making in accordance with relevant national legislation, international instruments, including the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People and Human Rights Law." And in fact, there's and I don't have it in front of me, but there's an additional part to it which talks about, which is the last part of this paragraph that our colleague from Eswatini is asking to remove, that clearly references or talks about the fact that anything in the framework may not be construed as diminishing or extinguishing the rights of Indigenous peoples. And so we would support keeping the language here as is. And if we want to make any changes, it should be to make it in line with the text that we all agreed upon 10 months ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Canada. Now EU.
Gracias, señor presidente. Apoyamos la propuesta de Canadá, es decir, apoyamos mantener el párrafo tal como figura en el CRP3 por los motivos expuestos y puesto que aquí se hace un recordatorio a la sección C y lo más efectivo será mantener el texto propuesto. Gracias.
Thank you. The last speaker is Uganda. Then we will close the session.
Thank you, Chair. I want to contribute to that paragraph as well, and note that while the import of that last part of the sentence points to the fact that the rights of indigenous people will not be diminished or extinguished. Actually, if we keep it like that, we will actually be diminishing or extinguishing the rights of local communities. So we wouldn't support a statement that actually offers rights to one group and removes rights from another group, when actually in the text of the convention, it is one single group which we refer to as indigenous communities and local peoples. So if we are to keep that paragraph, we would actually support the view from Eswatini that we can end after human rights law. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Uganda. Due to the time constraint, we will conduct a contact group here, so we have to close the session at this moment. Sorry, Brazil and DRC. We will back to this session, resume tomorrow morning. Thank you.